We're live. Schmuel Buckman. What's going on, guys? Hi, Lemmi. Hi. I'm going to add you up here. Sorry, we had a little, as I always do, I had a little kerfuffle, and we should be up there now. And I just, I set this stream up early, and when I went to go sign in, the message I got is YouTube had me set up for streaming on a webcam and would not change over to EvMux.
Hmm.
So I have no idea what that is, but we're up, we're live, and the world can see me and you. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How you doing?
Good. No complaints. No complaints. And
Cool beans.
I'm just waiting on Leo. He'll be here in a minute, and we will get this show rocking and rolling. And
All right.
Guru, hello. Michaela, hello. Cigarette Jones, hello. CHB, will he be muted? If you're lucky. Um, and let's do this, my dear. And man, you've been popping it with shorts lately, huh?
I've been trying.
They're great. They're great. They're a lot.
Thank you.
They're a lot of fun. And 10 hours of watching the toe.
Yeah.
My God, I feel bad for you.
10 hours of watching him beg, specifically.
Is that well, who was it? Was it Corndiff that was had pulled all of like the begging episodes and then
No. What he did was he pulled the last 9 months of episodes and he put them into this little software thingy I don't know. I don't know what the fuck he did some voodoo magic, and it turned into 9 months of begging on shows turned into a 2 hour and 22 minute clip, which is available to watch on at Corndiff on YouTube if you'd like to go watch that for 10 or 2 hours.
and how did you maintain your sanity through all of this? Did you actually watch it?
Did I? Yeah, absolutely, I did, and I listened to it. I had Yakety Sax playing for a while. That was pretty fun. I played a little Karmic X that kind of softened it a bit as well. And also that DJ Dabble's Goals song I played over it, which was a fucking fever dream in the best way.
I look. All I can say is if Karmic X softened it a little bit, it must have been really rough around the edges. And
It was a fucking blast. I had a great time.
cool. I don't think I could have done it. Anyway, thanks everybody for being here. We're going to get into a little cult talk tonight with our friend Leo, who is on his way. And I told him not to worry about it. He is in about as far away. He's outside the continental United States. So
Oh,
he's got to go out and wind up the generator and get all that stuff going. And that's where we are. And so let me just ask you, like, we'll get started here with you. What's your what do you think about, like, when you think about a cult, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
um, how easily it would be for me to join one. I would
Which
love to join a good cult.
which
I'll
makes
be
you
honest.
contrary to like 98% of the population.
No,
Because
it's
I was,
not. No,
yeah,
it's
no,
not.
it is, man. I was reading today, and
What the
whenever
fuck
they
are you
do,
talking about?
whenever,
I'm no okay. Well, what do you mean? Contrary to, I'm willing to admit that I'm susceptible to sheep mentality when literally every fucking buddy in the Dabbleverse is like, "Oh, I'm gonna suck somebody's dick," or if you don't suck somebody's dick, you must be the devil. Like I see it all the
yeah,
time.
no,
And
I
you
was,
can't tell me 98% of people aren't susceptible of joining cults, dude.
no,
That is
no, no. I'm not
unrealistic.
saying that they are or they aren't. I'm saying 98% of people say they're not susceptible
Okay.
to joining cults. That was my point. My point is when they, if they ask 100 people if you would join a cult, they'll get two yeses, and they'll be sort of like, yeah, I could see it happening, but a vast majority of people be, oh, no way, those people are weak, those people are soft. Um,
Into it.
and one of the questions is, I'm going to assume that we did this already, right? Hold on. Um, I'm going to assume that a bunch, a lot of people don't know they're in a cult until it's like too late. And that was the that was part. That's part of it. And that's my dog you hear in the background.
Yeah,
So
shut that dog up.
nah, he's
I'm
just
just kidding.
wriggling, and I do believe that if I'm sure Sigurd already did it, but if we could just get rid of the one guy there in the chat that's spamming us, that would be
Oh, he's
awesome.
funny. Leave him alone. Let him
Which one?
spam. The guy doing the middle finger.
Oh,
You talking about
okay.
him?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. All right. If you say so. Uh, the DV is a cult. It's a good
I
question.
agree.
It's
Yeah,
a
fuck yeah.
question. What is a cult? That's the biggest. That's sort of the biggest question,
Do you
right?
have bullet
S-
points? Do you have like
I
stuff?
I do. I do. So,
Let's do it.
have
Let's see
we
if the
ever
Dabbleverse is one.
It's not, because it well, here I mean, only because the way they define a cult, like, that's my question is, like, so there's a definition of a cult, and they say that
Mm.
it needs 4 characteristics. It needs an authoritarian leader. It has to have a transcendent belief system.
Okay.
Um, kind of the end justifies the means.
Okay.
Uh,
I feel like there. I hold on. What was the first one? A leader.
authoritarian leader.
Okay, I'll have to think about that one. The second one, a transcendent belief that something everybody in the Dabbleverse believes.
Yeah, I think they're talking about more.
Stuttering John sucks.
Is that but it's that's not a transcendent belief.
It is.
That's a
It so
no, it's a
is.
belief. It's like a belief of fact. It's like gravity, right? Gravity is not a
Yeah.
transcendent belief. It just is what it is. So, and then
Debatable.
the two other things are, um, it's a has to have a system of control,
Okay,
a system of
there's
it.
none of
I'm
that.
sorry, a system of influence. Um,
Mhm.
and then 4 is a system of control. And
I don't think there is a system of the YouTube terms of service. I think is the only control in the Dabbleverse.
that's pretty much no control at all. I mean, you can get away with,
Yeah.
99.9% of things in there. I know I'm throwing out big numbers, but yeah, if you want to shit on somebody or dock somebody or whatever, you can certainly do it, and nobody's, there's nobody to stop you. But the bigger thing I think is, the control and manipulation over the members, and a sort of morphing morality, right? Like, you go in there knowing what's wrong and what's not right, and eventually you find yourself doing things that are wrong and not right, and justifying them to yourselves.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if we, this is, so I was researching this stuff, and I guess I'd heard about it, but I'd never read about it. Is the Sarah Lawrence cult? So this kid is in college. Her dad gets released from prison, and he comes and stays in the dorm, and then started like a 10-year cult. And this, he went to jail. He's like in jail for the rest of his life, for the horrific things that he did. But this woman, Isabella Pollock, who was one of the roommates, got 5 years in jail for this. So let's thank the sorcerer. Not a cult for $5. The sorcerer, not a cult, but interest in the Dabbleverse can be reasonably explained by the audience's desire to construct it into a cult for comfort.
I don't
Wow.
know if I kind of wanted to just compare to see if there would be cult like I I don't know if it's so much a cult as it is throng of idiots and content creators.
You know, my question would be, could it become a cult?
No. It's too chaotic, I think, and there's no, like, leader, and everything is so fluid. You know what I
So
mean?
we don't have a leader, so you don't think that,
Do you
Patrick
think
is
there's a
this
leader? No.
authoritarian, narcissistic.
Okay, okay, you wanna, an on paper leader of the Dabbleverse? I hold the title belt as queen,
Yeah, yes, you do. Yes, you do.
so
But
I'm
is
just
there
kidding.
I you are nah, you're our queen, Lemmy. We all know that. And if I what do you call it? If I said any different, I'd get a lot of
I'm
argument.
joking, I'm joking.
Um, but
I bow to the chat and
yeah, here's
whatnot.
my but here look, let me ask you the question though. So all right, so you got to have an authoritarian leader, right? You got to have a transcendent belief system, just in these four things, and they could be different. I'm just basing it off of what is generally accepted. These are the accepted things. This comes from a woman who was in the Democratic Workers Party, and which became a cult, and she had to break away from. Blah blah blah. And she's sort of the expert on this stuff. And I can't. I have her name written down, but that's on another page. But you have the systems. So you got the authoritarian leader, the transcendent belief system, systems of influence, and systems of control. Right? Um, could you build it? Could you start with a Dabbleverse and turn it into a cult? Not you necessarily, but the worldly you.
Well, it's funny that you say not you, because whenever somebody follows me on Twitch, a notification will pop up on my screen that says, "Welcome to the cult." And I've always joked that I'm just trying to start my own little cult. But I feel like where there's people, there's and influence, there's capabilities to start a cult in anything. You could start a cult inside a church. You know what I mean?
Uh, um, let me get well, or some people would argue the church is a cult. So
Some people would argue that. Yes.
I have a personal opinion about uh, to me what makes it a cult and what doesn't, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But the sorcerer says exactly, and each leader has supporters trying to make them the primary leader while imposing their dogma and splitting tribally. It's ancient and familiar,
Yep.
evolutionarily speaking.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tribal thing
And we certainly have tribes here, right?
for sure.
Um, and it's funny because, hey, Leo, welcome. Uh,
Hello,
we,
hello.
we got started a little bit. So I guess I would say our first question was
Hi,
we
Mikey.
we talked a little bit about cults. We talked about I'm trying to find her name. Lackland, maybe. Lalich,
Oh,
who
Yanya Lelich, yeah,
yeah,
she's really cool.
who basically defined gives us the four characteristics of the cult. We talked about that. Um, and then I asked the question, is the Dabbleverse a cult? And or knowing that what you
With having
know,
like a
not so much
broad
about the
definition.
Dabbleverse, but the internet or the
Okay.
YouTube, could it be a cult? Could it turn into a cult at some point? Thinking of the four things that we need, which I'll repeat them since you just walked in: authoritarian leader, transcendent belief system, systems of influence, and systems of control.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up my notes, but I mean, I think this is like one of the reasons why I tried to make a couple videos about like what I call second order cults or like diet cults because there's lots of groups that have like some of the characteristics but aren't all quite all the way there. And the reason I sort of got onto that way of thinking is because I actually think that like cults are part of like human nature in a way, like so I don't know. That's why I kind of have an issue with like I don't know getting too deep into the definition of them because I think they're I don't know. It's more interesting for me to like kind of like splice and dice them.
Can you?
But
Are you able to read the chat? I'm going to put this back up from the sorcerer, who is a psychiatrist.
let's
Uh,
see here.
is exactly, and each leader has supporters trying to make them the primary leader while imposing their dogma and splitting tribally. It's ancient and familiar, evolutionarily speaking.
Yeah, is it was it a while? Okay, I see. Oh wow, the chat's really moving. Yeah, I am able to read it. Yeah, right. Has supporters trying to make them the primary leader and splitting Yeah, exactly. And one of the most interesting things I think about like the formation of cults, and I think of the ingredients for a cult sort of like how the ingredients for like a cake, you know? Like you can make different things if you're missing like eggs or whatever. You make like a flauta or something. But um, one of the most interesting things is like the first supporters in a cult. And as I've said before, I think they're almost more important than the actual cult leader. But um, yeah, it's it just kind of gets into like factions and like in-group out-group dynamics. And if you look at I had like a video that I did on Nixium like maybe a year ago that has like all these interesting diagrams of like hominids and the way that they deal with like in groups and out groups, and you can see the same patterns in like the great apes and like humans. Like we have a lot of the shared characteristics. So I think it's pretty like deeply ingrained in our lizard brain.
My part of my thing with it is what really makes it more of a cult than obviously doing crazy stuff, but the inability to leave and freely
Yeah,
walk away
yeah,
without the group harming you. That's sort of my definition of when we start to get into cults. Now, obviously, there's the Jim Jones, Jonestown cult. There's Nexium. I was just talking about the Larry Ray at Sarah Lawrence. Um,
fascinating one.
yeah, and that stuff. Those are definitely cults. But I've got people who think that the Catholic Church is a cult, um, right? Or the Masons or the Elks Club. You know, um,
Well, and I think Lelich at some point in the video that I sent like describes this as like one of the major sticking points for what she considers a like another term that people use is either high control groups or new religious movements, but like they sort of define malicious cults as like ones that have like thought control or thought reform and like what have issues like when you leave. And so that's I think like a pretty good just as good of a criteria as like anything is like what happens when you leave, I think that
yeah,
I'm
and
gonna hold on. Can I interject something? Can
of
you put
course
sure.
that's
somebody
why you're
other
here.
than the sorcerer's comments up on the screen? I know you want to suck his dick. Could you put
I'm
some? I know he's popular, dude. Could you put
I'm
somebody
Well,
getting
else? There's poor
I'm
chat too, dude.
I'm getting there. Well, it is poor chat. I'm getting there.
Sorry, sorcerer.
The sorcerer only paid for one, and I am getting there. But ozone, we were so rushed. I did not do introductions. Ozone put up. How about some introductions? And I was holding off. I hadn't put up anybody else's chat
I also don't mean to
until
be so
that.
aggressive. I've been like
So
so unnecessarily aggressive
it's all
since that
right.
10-hour stream. I
I'll get
really do
I'll get
apologize.
no, it's
super
great.
aggressive right back at you. But we're trying to make a cult.
Mix it up. Yeah.
Uh, so we have not Leo Gunn, Leo Helmer. Leo is our kind of legal expert that we bring in from Alaska, who is just basically an all-around smart and interesting guy. And we came to our universe through Steel Toe, was analyzing what was going to happen. I shouldn't say analyzing. He was predicting what was going to happen at the Steel Toe sentencing. And based upon what he was predicting, uh, we kind of knew. Well, it was accurate. I will just put that down, and because we kind of reached the point where everybody thought Aaron was just going to get away with everything, and um, Leo cued in on a few things that was just not going to happen. And all right, and then we have the queen of the Dabbleverse, Little Lemmi, uh, a leader of a small cult somewhere in the country
No,
hiding.
listen. If you say that one of the things about a cult is the inability to leave, I would have to disagree that I have a cult, and I'd have to disagree that like Catholicism is a cult also, or like
Hmm.
church and stuff, because you can fucking leave. Some churches you can't. Some churches are a little extreme, and not can't, but like there are consequences and shit like that. Like Mormons, there's
Right.
consequences. Scientology, there are consequences for leaving that kind of stuff.
For
Well,
sure. And
yeah,
and Jehovah's
yeah.
Witness has a very similar thing to Scientology where they disfellowship you. So I think in terms of like major religions with like millions of members, that's probably the closest thing to a cult that there is. But I mean, that's why I think it's important to like why a lot of people want to try to use new terms like new religious movement or high control groups, because cult is an ancient term, and it didn't really come into its current meaning until like the mid 19th century. Coincidentally, when all the Millerite religions like Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons were started.
Yeah, but we did look. We had Roman cults, right? The god cults. I mean,
Right, but it was a different thing. It didn't have a negative connotation. And the chat is amazing. I saw somebody making a Sib Hashin reference. That's like a deep O and A cut. That was amazing.
yeah, I'm gonna catch up with the chat, guys.
No, it's all good.
It's flying. It's hard for me to keep up with.
It's
And
great.
if you have something really important to say and you really want to get it out there, hit the. I would suggest supertips.gg/Buckman would be the best way. But we're gonna try to get as much as we can. But I also like I don't get to have Leo on too often or Lemmy, so I really want to hear what they have to say as well. Uh, Hack the movies, Tony. The Undertaker had a cult in WWF in the 90s. It was cool until Vince McMahon turned out to be the real leader.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to say really quick is I think Lemmy does have a good point though in terms of like Mormonism, and like the more you're socially enmeshed in a group, like the consequences of leaving are huge. So but it's
Yeah,
not quite
you
as
lose your
overt.
entire family, your
Yeah, and
children, your
business and
family,
all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, but does that happen? I mean, it's certainly not exclusive to the Mormons and religious organizations, right? And I know ex-Mormons that get along fine with. I think that might have been true 50 years ago. I don't think it's as true today.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, God, have you? The Executioner Songs is a book about this guy named Gary Gilmore that like went on a killing spree and like forced the government to execute him in the '70s, and he was a Jack Mormon, and it like that the scene that Norman Mailer describes in that book of like the desolation and of like being excommunicated. It's pretty gnarly. That's a great
yeah, and
depiction of that.
Gary Gilmore, for those of you that don't know, was like the first guy put to death by firing squad in like 100 years or something,
Mm.
and it was a big deal.
Nor- yeah, the author Norman Mailer wrote a nonfiction book about it, which was amazing.
Yeah, I've always. It's funny because uh, so I heard somebody once say it was a Truman Capote knockoff of In Cold Blood, which it's not, but I thought that was
No,
pretty fun.
yeah, that's interesting, but it's a much more weighty book. It's like 750 pages, probably twice the length of In Cold
Well,
Blood. But
Norman
yeah,
Mailer likes to write, and he probably didn't have the alcohol problem that Truman Capote did. So he
well,
he
he did
he
stab his
would
wife and almost kill her. But yeah, yeah.
he would get there too. Uh, Guru One Schmuel does this with Beloved Chatter too, Lemmy. Um,
Does what?
he's referring to the sorcerer stuff.
Oh,
So I tend to get like in the beginning of the show, I'm a little bit like I'm going where I'm
I'm just
familiar and
busting your balls. I'm just
I'm gonna
busting
go
your
on now. I know, but this will be something that I will hear about because I hear about it all the time. And now it's gonna be now that Lemmy agrees with them.
Oh, good then.
Yeah,
This chat is on fire.
I'm gonna hear about it. I'm just gonna hear about it. Yeah. So I'm gonna try to keep where we can focus on going. What do you call it? Sort of the issue at hand here. Um, all right, so we talked about these control things, and Lemmy, I agree with you that like the Catholic Church is not a cult, stuff like that. Chris Mack put up in the chat that that AA people think AA is a cult, and so like that was the point of saying, oh, well, these four things make it a cult, and what Leo is then saying is like, well, maybe that's an out of date, maybe cult is an out of date term. And we have these high pressure organizations that have some characteristics of a cult. Am I speaking for, is that basically what you're saying, Leo?
Yeah, but I mean, I think that people, when they say like AA is a cult, for example, we're sort of talking it a little bit past each other, but because like what I'm trying to say is that like a group like AA is a great example of like a precursor group because there have been a lot of different kind of cult like situations that have come out of AA. There's a long form article that I read not long ago about like a couple of people that were like high up in the AA organization that kind of like did all sorts of disturbing things to people. But like certain groups have people in it that are like fertile ground for cult. Yoga groups are like a huge conduit for cults. You know, like Nixium was like mostly like a lot of people were recruited from yoga, and there's been a lot of yoga cults. So there's certain groups that I think have a lot of like the a lot of the elements already, but just aren't quite there. You know, they just need some like a charismatic leader or just one other big ingredient to swoop in and use that feeding
Who
ground.
was the Bikram yoga guy? Wasn't he?
Yeah, Chowdhury, and he like fled the country on sexual assault charges. I remember I wrote an article about something having to do with this, and his mentee, like the guy he trained, also got charged with like sexual assault, cult type stuff, and he was connected to Hilaria Baldwin of all people. So it's like Jesus, Greg Gamuccio was his name. Anyway, it's like cults within cults, like Russian nesting dolls.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, let's say Ashley Cummings says Bikram is not an accurate representation of
Yeah,
yoga at all. Yeah,
that's a good point, Ashley. Yeah,
we get it.
that's good that you clarified that because even like normal like yoga folks are like, yeah, Bikram's crazy.
But even if you, but if you went into your local Pentecostal church, you know, your sort of fundamental, or more fundamental Baptist church, they'd be screaming that yoga is a cult,
I
right?
went to a Southern Fundamental Baptist school when I hit high school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, well, what do you consider not being able to leave when it's the school you have to go to and you have to go to chapel every Thursday, you have to go to youth group every Wednesday, you have to go soul winning, which is where they take a bunch of underage kids to the ghetto and make us knock on people's doors and tell them about the good word of Jesus Christ.
Oh my god.
Is that a
Uh,
cult?
it
Let
dep
me ask you a question. Does book burnings in the parking lot of the school next to the RV of the televangelist that's there all week, is that cult-like behavior?
Well, it's cult-like behavior, but you're a high schooler, so there's some parental issues there, right? So
My
that's
parents paid for me to go to
that's
that
my
school.
yeah, yeah. Well, and look at what it did for you. It worked great. Um,
I actually
That's
loved
crazy.
that school. It was a fucking experience. I went my whole life from in public school until I hit high school, and I went to a Southern Fundamentalist Baptist school, and there were 28 people in my graduating class, and they
Hmm.
had been at that school since they were in like K4, so I was new as fuck.
Did you grow up religious, Lemmy?
Nope,
Oh, interesting. So how
and
did
they
you
sent you to
interface
a
with that?
Baptist school. How does that happen?
because it was the cheapest private school my parents could find. They weren't even that religious.
Hmm. But
And
were they Baptist?
My stepdad was, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
uh, that is a form of self-preservation. They brainwash the drones to carry on the word. Um, we could get into that when we talk about it, but I'm gonna save that for another night because I have mucho opiniados on these churches. Um, so let's talk about Ari Jane, who says she loves when Lemmy speaks. So, Leah, let's talk about that for a second. What's the like? Where where does it begin? You know, like where do you think it begins? And where, you know, let's just say that the ending is drinking Kool-Aid in Guyana, right? Of the worst, but um, where do you think it starts? Like, where do you think people will get? I wrote, you know, the morality morphs, and that's what that's kind of a thing for me. And is, but how do we know? I don't know. You I think you may know what I'm asking in a crazy way. So go ahead.
I think every cult is unique in a sense, but the origins of the People's Temple are fascinating, and Jim Jones' early history is also fascinating. There's a really great long article by a researcher I happen to adore, who's a anti-fascist researcher named John Judge. It's called "The Black Hole of Guyana," and he presents like a line of evidence that Jones was somehow an agent or affiliated with intelligence, like going back to like the 50s or maybe even earlier. And the way he started out was like as a teenager preaching on the street and like doing all sorts of crazy stuff, like eating like pulling chicken livers out of his mouth, like as if he was like pulling out like some sort of satanic thing, and just doing all this sort of like street preaching magic type stuff. And then he went down to like South America and like had this crazy adventures where he traveled all over the place without any like real visible source of income. And just he was just, I mean, he was just a con man. So I think that cult kind of came from the same place that a pyramid scheme would come from, but instead things just the path of least resistance was like a cult. And then they eventually moved to like California and then the Bay Area, and they became a huge political power. Jim Jones was like a kingmaker in that area, and he was close with all sorts of people, like the Harvey Milks and God, who's the Dianne Feinstein, and she was
Right.
actually there when. Anyway, so yeah, and then eventually they left to Guyana once the heat was on. So, but I mean, every cult I think has a different story, which is what's so interesting about it.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'm always leery of intelligence connections because I just don't see the guy eating chicken liver as the person that the CIA is going to want to recruit. But
Well, I mean, they're not recruiting him to be an actual officer. Like they just maybe exchange information, or and especially like in the 50s and 60s during the Cold War, they just wanted to be in on everything. They wanted to have a hand in everything. So I
right.
don't know if
Well,
you've read Chaos, Tom O'Neill's book, but that's a pretty good
he
exemplar.
was so he was right. He was always a leftist, but the Jim Jones. Um, but the thing about him, I thought the thing that got him the most attention was he had his following was mostly minority, and
Yeah,
those were the people that the people of San Francisco, the Feinsteins, and those guys wanted to hook up with the political powers.
yeah.
They were
They
looking
had
for
like a grassroots like ground organization where they would bus people to like voting polls and stuff like that. So they were very important in that area politically.
right, and they could definitely get stuff out. But all right, but I'm just saying like that. So that's the end, and then I'm looking at other things that
Like
we
take Nixium. It started out as like a sort of like business seminar landmark forum type thing, hybridized with some of the multi-level marketing DNA, because that's what Keith's previous scheme was. Keith Raniere, the founder, and so that it's like, how do you can you find like a common sort of germ or genesis of where cults came from? Between it's just like kind of where I don't know. Yeah, they just it's like almost like if every scheme has like a related cult. So like multi-level marketings have multi-level marketing cults, and so on and so forth.
right. And look, I've always thought things like I would have called Amway a cult, and stuff like that. But the deal is, if you leave, you're gone. Nobody's coming after you. So um, that may be too strict. So I may be applying too strict of a like my own putting my own personal opinion in what's. So we can say things are cultish as opposed to actual cults.
Have either of you ever gone down the MLM rabbit hole? Like it's a really interesting one.
I have, I have. I've spent a lot of time looking at the rabbit hole, and quite simply, they're pyramid schemes, but they don't say that. Like Amway uses they don't use a pyramid. They draw circles. And you remember the Penn and Teller bullshit episode where very quickly you would run out of people on the planet in order to
Yep.
keep this thing going.
How about you, Lemmy? Have you ever gone down that rabbit hole?
I I often wondered if insurance sales was multi of like a form of multi-level marketing for like, and I'm not even sure if it's like for a good cause, because
Do you
I feel
know
like there's
Patrick?
such a better way to do that.
Do you know Patrick Bet David, the YouTube guy that has Valuetainment? He has a big
That
channel where
okay, that name sounds familiar, but I'm not really like quite sure of his content.
he owned a multi-level marketing company called People Helping People, and it sold insurance. So that's definitely in the model for sure. And insurance is a
Okay.
weird. I have had similarly, sort of out there thoughts about the nature of insurance and how it's kind of fucked up if you just sort of zoom out and
I
think about it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But
That's
yeah,
Primerica was that forever and forever,
right. I
and
think they, yeah,
they might still be around. And I have a nephew who's really intelligent who went into. I used to work in that business, and he was like, he wanted to get into it, and I'm like, dude, that's not. You're not providing a product. You're looking to hook your family and friends up. Um, but I we could go into a lot of that stuff comes from the insurance MLM stuff tends to be life insurance and investment products as opposed to like property and casualty or auto insurance, things like that. Although
What do
they
you think about
did try to
supplementary insurance?
get our supplementary insurance, but it's like it's not about need, right? It's not about what you need. It's about selling the max,
mm,
um, and getting you hooked in. But the big part of the Primerica thing and others was they would try to get you to invest in cheap like term insurance, and then they would try to get their hooks into your investment money, and that
yeah.
was it's such a that my opinion. I don't want Primerica coming after me, but um, that was my opinion. It was all. It really came from an idea by a guy who was, buy term and invest the difference. And somebody realized that term was cheap, and we could sell it, and we can get people to sell it, and then we can get our hooks into the rest of the money that these people have. So,
Hmm.
um, but yeah,
I just think it's an interesting area that's like sort of related in a sense to the idea of cults because there's this same sort of matrix of criteria that goes into like what's an MLM, but then there's things that are like MLM like that don't quite fit. Like reverse what do you call it, like reverse mortgages, or there's like all sorts of like crazy schemes that aren't quite MLMs, but like to me the dominant feature of an MLM is like you don't really have a product, and like instead of being like the person that's nominally the distributor is actually the customer. That's sort of the to me the feature that defines an MLM, but and the
yeah.
recruitment thing.
And in my view, it's always been if you're not making money selling a product, then it's an MLM because you're making money by getting others to sell something. If you can't sell and make money on what it is that you're actually selling, then it's a scam,
And
in
and the other
my
thing
view.
too is that like when I was doing research on Scientology, there's a lot of like interesting sidelines to people in cults, especially like Scientology, being also involved in MLMs because of that they have the same type of like magical thinking that's required almost. So there's a lot of overlap, and to me, it's like MLM groups are again like a precursor group for cults because like there was that recent story about like that Bitcoin MLM or whatever, where like the leader of it, some woman from Eastern Europe, like went missing and hasn't been found for like a couple years. Like that was a cult, I think, or at least close to it. But it started
Yeah,
as an MLM.
yeah. All right. So getting like to kind of get back.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. It's okay. Back on track here. We could the I had never heard of the Democratic Workers Party as a cult, right? And then that's what is her name again? Lalich. That's where she came out of. That's where she sort of discovered it was a cult. Um, Marlene Dixon was the founder of it, big time leftist. And I guess 40 years ago, was fired from the University of Chicago, and it launched protests and very leftist, very Communist Manifesto stuff. And a lot of people were into it at the time. And she just became controlling and exhibiting narcissistic and exhibiting all of the things of a cult. And when you say the thing about the people that join, Lailich really helped her get that thing going, you know? Uh, Although she eventually walked away, she took down a lot of people along with her. And like Larry Ray had Isabella Pollock, um, who would comfort the girls. So the Sarah Lawrence cult, you want to give a brief? Quick? Do you want to quickly explain it, Leo, or I can? Or
I know it about a little bit, but if one of you has like a more in-depth knowledge, I just sort of followed a few news
so I
stories on
said
it.
it earlier. So a girl's father in the dorm at Sarah Lawrence gets out of jail, and he comes and stays with the daughter, and he's giving them advice, and he's holding seminars, and he's getting these women enamored of him, and he's having sexual relations with a bunch of them, particularly the Isabella Pollock woman, and then he starts to make money. He's got them prostituting themselves, um, and if you left, if you wanted to leave, if you talked about it or whatever, a lot of physical violence, and a lot of shame. That if well, what are people going to think about you if you said you did this to if you were out there doing it? And apparently it went on for a decade, uh, at, at least. And so it was like he started it. He didn't seem terribly impressive to me when I was looking at it, but with the Isabella woman, he was able to keep it going because she had that ability to be both good cop and bad cop,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, the other thing I was going to mention, and I think I mentioned this briefly in a previous episode, but sort of a mirror to um, Yanya Lalich is Alexandra Stein, who's also in a Marxist cult or leftist cult, and for a number of years, and then came out and wrote a number of books, but one called Terror, Love, and Brainwashing that compares cults to domestic violence relationships and totalitarian regimes. And I think there's a lot of overlap. And she has this whole thing called attachment theory, where it's like you have like a misaligned or malignant style of attachment from being in these type of groups. It's almost like a Stockholm syndrome type thing. And so
Right, and
yeah,
Lelich does do. Talks about there's a lot of similarity between being a cult member and being in a abusive relationship,
yeah,
like a family relationship. Um, so that, and she talks about family cults and things like that.
yeah,
I have to open the door and let this dog out before
sure,
he
yeah.
gets me. So I'm gonna pop off for one second.
I would like to give the floor to Lemmy. I feel like I'm hogging the mic, but yeah,
I like to listen. I like to
cool.
listen to informed people with, curated and collected bullet points and whatnot.
I think it's one of the things I enjoy about you is like the at times sniperish nature of your comments. These coming from like nowhere and just bat off like a really interesting, insightful, sometimes
Thanks.
loud comment. It's great, yeah. But the thing with I was gonna say about Alexander Stein, like that's one of the things that really gave me some of the grounding for my thoughts about like how cults are like part of human nature because of this spillover to like all these different types of things like political ideologies and one-on-one relationships, domestic violence stuff. And I actually,
Doesn't it seem like the more opportunities we have to split, the faster it happens? Like everybody's like, oh, everybody's so divided these days, and everybody's looking for an excuse to hate each other. It seems like it's just exponentially growing
Hmm.
like fast. Everybody's just isolating from each other at a very
Right.
rapid rate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and I think in terms of like the dynamic of cults or weird high control groups, what it means is like the groups that do exist out there are like very much smaller. Like the Love Has Won people that like segregate themselves to a house with like maybe like a few people or something like that. Whereas like in the '60s, there's like hundreds of thousands of members in cults, so it's definitely like that's one of the things that I really thought a lot about is like how the societal milieu is like the soil for like a cult that's like going to determine so much about what's possible to happen in terms of a high control group. Like Manson is like the perfect example. Gets dropped into Haight Ashbury, and that just has so much influence on you know
Does he get
seekers.
dropped into Haight Ashbury, or does he seek it out?
I you know have you read Chaos, Tom O'Neill's book? Have either of you read that? It's a great book. Um,
No, I don't think so.
he researched the case for like 20 years. He was originally assigned the it as like a magazine article to do like a 30th anniversary thing, and he didn't finish his investigation until like 5 years ago or so, and he hasn't been able to answer that question. But like, what's clear is that Manson had this weird probation officer that wasn't acting as probation officers normally do, and Manson kept getting in trouble, like serious trouble, like drugs and
Mm-hmm.
being associated with young girls and all this sort of stuff, and he just kept getting let out in that period of like 67 to 69. Whereas before, like he would get violated right away. It's such an interesting, fascinating book. I definitely recommend it. And there's an audiobook as well if people aren't into the page turning. And I've checked out both of them. They're great.
Right. So was he?
I've watched
Good.
some stuff about that specifically.
Yeah.
That, and I'm almost positive it was MK Ultra based
Yep.
content.
For sure. And O'Neill goes a long way towards proving that, but he doesn't quite get there, which is kind of what's great about him is he's like an actual journalist. So if the evidence isn't there, but he'll show you like all the different tendrils. And it's like you'd have to kind of be really credulous or gullible to believe that he wasn't involved in MK Ultra because he just happened to be at like all the right places. Like he was at like when he was in San Francisco, him and his girls would go to the free Haight Ashbury medical clinic every week, and that's where his probation officer was, and that's where Jolly West was. Jolly West was an MK Ultra psychologist, but he wasn't officially connected to Manson. But the Manson's probation officer was also doing amphetamine research at the same time about like how drugs affected groups. It's just there's so much stuff that's like suggestive to a high degree, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and as somebody that like is a connoisseur of psychedelics and other narcotics at times, that what fascinates me a lot is that like the LSD that's described in that book and just in general in that time period is just not at all like what has come down to us, in through the ages. It's just seems like a different drug. It had some very weird properties where some people would become incredibly suggestible, and that was what a lot of the research was about. Was like trying to find the people that would take LSD and become a follower of Manson, and people that wouldn't.
Interesting. Very interesting.
To what was the point? But what was the intention? What did they want to find out?
You know, there's a great writer and poet named DC Dave Martin that wrote this thing about different techniques of truth suppression. And on that list of, I think it's 17 techniques of truth suppression that the government uses, one is that like they want you to figure the entire case out. And because like all the MK Ultra documents were destroyed except for like a few scraps that got uh, discovered by happenstance, like we can't really like in good faith make that type of determination as like a public citizen, but you can make some pretty good guesses. Um, Joan Didion wrote after the Manson murders, it was like the end of the 60s. And so maybe one popular supposition is that the government wanted to demonize the left and the hippie movement. That's just one possible one. Who knows, though? There's not enough evidence to, I think, make a firm determination.
Okay. I always get the problem for me with conspiracy theories is at some point to me it's like you have to take such huge leaps of faith in order to believe that they actually occurred the way we think they did. And we're also putting together a lot of a lot of the research, right, on LSD and that stuff was out of Berkeley, right? And that's where people were flocking to. So if you were the government, it would be the place to do it. If you were going to do if you were going to test it, you would test it there. So chicken and egg, right? Is Manson there because of that, or is Manson there because they wanted him to be there?
I guess I just have a different perspective on it. Like, I'm not in it to believe or not believe, but I think it's interesting to just go on the journey and take a ride and read something and at least, have that knowledge at your disposal in addition to like what the mainstream suggestion or narrative is. I have had so many interesting, like just journeys into weird rabbit holes just by going with something and reading it. And you don't have to accept it or believe it, but it's just interesting to know what another possible story is.
Yeah, I get that. I find myself surrounded by conspiracy theories now. Like everything is a conspiracy theory, um, no matter what it is, and I don't know. I feel like I just feel like I'm losing reality with that stuff. Um, yeah, I'm very much an Occam's
Is
razor
the
guy. Like
devil versus psyop?
the simplest. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
Oh
mean, or
man.
take the not that Leo knows about this, but the Schizo Sean thing
I
at
love Schizo Sean.
the Villa Roma. Yeah, but
I
Fuck
I
don't
yeah.
mean,
really
it
know
was
about.
like
I haven't been
he
following the Dabbleverse for a while, for like a week or two. So
right. But anyways, this guy he went up tried to make content. He got in a beef, and uh, he was very drunk, and he did get thrown out. And we're really not sure, right? There's parts of the stories that are missing. But what's hilarious is we go from him admitting that yeah, I was drinking too much and got and blacked out to he was roofied because they wanted to get rid of him. And it just becomes like and then
I get
that
that.
becomes the accepted thing. And I'm just like,
Sure.
you know,
But
that's what
just
I
as
see
like
happening.
an example, not directly related to like political conspiracies, I've been really getting into like reading and watching stuff about ancient Egypt, and a lot of the standard version of Egyptology just doesn't really comport with like the facts on the ground, and so that's when I think it's interesting to look at alternative theories. Like for example, the building of the pyramids at Giza, or even like the manufacture of like these incredibly precise vases. That's something I've been really getting into lately. That were found at like a pre-dynastic or before the pyramid civilization site. So like basically, people that have examined these using modern scan technology have a really good case that like they had to have some sort of power tool. So it's like when you have a situation like that where like the standard mo like just doesn't cut it at all, that's when I think it's interesting to really take a flight of fancy, I guess.
I get it. I mean, but look, one of the things about Egypt that when I listen to people is you really did have an unlimited amount of labor, and you had a lot of time, and so there were a lot of things that you could do, but it's everything from uh, ancient aliens to a pre-existing society. Um, but I don't think do you really think that we're that surprised when we uncover stuff? Like, do scientists go, "Whoa, this was not what I expected"?
I don't know. There's like a old saying that science progresses one funeral at a time. I think that's very accurate.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I've like seen some of the the ossuary stuff, and then you have the
Art
God,
Bell's in the chat.
what are the names of the scrolls? I can't think. The Dead Sea Scrolls, right?
Yeah,
I
And
thought you said
that's
squirrels.
yeah, me too. I was like,
and
well, we're back to Scientology.
somebody's figured out, right, and somebody developed a computer program that you could read them
Yeah,
without
that's
without unrolling them, and what's in there is what is the same as every it just confirms basically what we already knew. But I don't want to sidetrack it. Speaking of squirrels, um, Scientology generally accepted as a cult. Yes
I
or
think it's
no?
one of the cultiest cults. Yeah. I think
And
L.
Abs-
Ron Hubbard like devised like one of the most perfect cult transmission ideologies to the point where yeah, it's just really great. I spent a lot of time down the Scientology rabbit hole, and it's like I don't know. It's one of those things where it's just terrifying and weird. It's a bizarre world. Um,
there's a there's a Scientology building. It's not a building, but it's like this place in a building downtown. And my best friend, she calls me up one day and she goes, "I'm curious. I'm gonna go in there." And I was like, "I'll fucking You're not going in there, bitch. You will never go in there.
if
Never."
you do, you'll never come out. Yeah,
or you'll come out different than you went in.
yeah. It
The
should really.
Yeah, I was listening to Luigi Greenberg, um, who is an attorney, and Luigi Greenberg is the name that he uses as his character. And a couple of weeks ago, did a breakdown on the formation of Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard and his connection to Aleister Crowley
Yep.
and the guy
Jack Parsons. Yeah,
Jack
it's
Par-
fascinating.
and it's essentially it was a con from the very beginning. And the thing is that Elrond stole the idea for he was like it was a con, and they knew it was a con, and apparently Elrond picked up the I don't remember who it was, but he picked up the idea. Well, let's make it a religion, and you can kind of get away with anything
Yep.
from somebody else.
Yeah,
So
that was like one of his main sort of in one of his best strategic decisions for sure. Because when Scientology first came out, it wasn't called Scientology. It was just the book Dianetics. I think it was in 1950,
right,
and it was sort of a fad. It came out. Tony Ortega has a great article about this where he talks about how it was the same year that the hula hoop came out. Which was a huge fad at the time. And so L. Ron Hubbard actually like went bankrupt at the end of this fad period of about a year, and he lost the rights to Dianetics. And then there's like a bunch of interesting historical accounts of him talking to other sci-fi writers and saying things like, "Well, let's try the religion angle." And he had like benefactors that helped him fund it, and then he started Scientology, which had a bunch of extra weird features like past live regression and all this sort of stuff that wasn't in Dianetics initially. And yeah, and then he went off like a rocket ship.
all right. So what attracts? Uh, we started off before you were here, and Lemmy said she would totally say. You say it, Lemmy. You say what you said. Don't let
I
me.
I would absolutely. I'm looking for a good cult to join. If I'm being
Mm-hmm.
honest, I'm totally susceptible to that sort of shit. I'm not even kidding.
I mean, I think it has a lot of appeal. It gets a lot of stuff done for you, especially if you're the leader of a cult like David Miscavige. I mean, that guy lives large, you know. Oh,
Yeah.
He
I see
freaks
Leo
me out.
Gunn mentioning that Christian Weston Chandler, I believe, is a literal expert on
No,
Scientology.
I'm guessing it's Clearwater Chad.
Oh
Yes,
yeah,
I've
it
had the
is.
same confusion.
okay, yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
weird.
It is Clearwater Chad,
Okay.
that he was referring to.
Have I mentioned that there's a couple like weird like minor Dabbleverse figures that I knew in like previous contexts, and Clearwater Chad is one of them. Like I knew him from a series of videos that I did about a cult that started in an anti-Scientology group, which is hilarious. But I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Aaron Smith Levin, who runs like a pretty big anti-Scientology channel.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Ron.
Yep. And he had like huge controversy around the time of the Danny Masterson trial because he was alleged to have um, assaulted, I guess, done bad things to a number of different women and just generally been an asshole. And
I remember that.
but he had like his own group of like super rabid supporters, and it was like a cult grew in an anti-cult group, which was crazy. And Clearwater
Do
Chad
you know who
was part
Zero
of.
Dark Tony is by any
Yep,
chance?
he was part of it too,
Yeah.
and huge scumbag. But like
Yes.
him and Clearwater Chad were part of this network called the SP network or whatever. And Clearwater Chad did like anti-Scientology demonstrating videos where he held like a picket sign in front of like no one for like hours in front of Scientology locations. And
I love it.
yeah,
Okay.
it was
I'm
it
on
was
board then.
really yeah. Well, I think one of the interesting things about that is it gets into like tactics of demonstration and protest and all that sort of thing. And I think it was hugely counterproductive for the anti-Scientology cause. Anyway, it's too long to get into, but I knew Chad from that before, so he's one of the archetypes I think of like I've mentioned this, but in my mind anyway, he's a type of person that like follows these type of things and also has that same sort of susceptibility to joining these sort of causes, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it's an adaptive trait that humans have, but some people just really have it in spades.
Yeah, he's unique. I will say that. And it's funny because there was a bunch of there were anti Clearwater Chad people, and they were doing like, oh, he was kicked out of the anti Scientology group,
Yeah,
and but he's been around a long time, and he's staged, like you said, he was doing the standing there for hours, right, to nobody, doing that. So, um, is it a gimmick, or and then like you said, does that help or hurt? Because then you look like an idiot, right, standing there while everybody else is going around about their business. Um,
yeah,
uh,
and it's like one of the features that you need in a cult is like an outside opposing force to like galvanize people inside. So it's like Chad was like giving them essentially fuel, when Scientology has been like sort of sputtering and dying out. So like this new attacker could only serve their cause, and they would probably take pictures of these protesters and then send them out in like donor emails, that sort of thing. So I mean, I think it was hugely counterproductive in that sense.
and did they do anything? Like, what's their response to that? Just use him for donations and whatnot, but kind of ignore him. Because Scientology is known for its squirrel squads and its coming at, like, viciously coming after people legally.
Yeah. I
And
think a lot of that was like for people that were in the cult before, and Clearwater Chad was not. And for like high ranking defectors like Marty Rathbun or shit, what's his name? Mike Rinder, that were like executives that left. But Clearwater Chad they're not going to actually do anything except maybe kick him off their property, but not overtly. But I mean, they're going to use him as a useful idiot if at all possible. He's not worth, sending the squirrel busters after. I don't know
yeah,
if
I
you guys
just
have seen those videos of the guys with the GoPros, cameras on their heads.
oh man, I have seen them, and they have no they don't care. they just don't care. There- no manners, no manners at all, no niceness at all. Um, but how the hell does a guy like Clearwater Chad go from anti-Scientology protests to finding the Dabbleverse?
No, Zero Dark Tony did. So there's crossover. I'm a fan of Aaron. I'm a fan of that Scientology network. You know what I mean? So I'm not. It's a big ass YouTube channel. Of course, I feel like there's going to be some crossover. Fuck, there are random YouTube channels that I watch that I've been watching since like 2015, and I'll give you a specific example. I was watching Answers with Joe Scott about a month ago,
Oh
and
yeah,
when I love him so much, and at the
he's
end,
great.
he names off all of his new patrons, and Sketty Tooth John was one of them, and I was like, "Oh my
Wow.
god!"
Uh, just another random one I just thought of is Nasty Neil, who's been a guest on
Mhm.
Stuttering John's
I love
podcast a few
him.
times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to listen to his wrestling podcast because he had a couple interesting guests, like the guy from Kayfabe Commentaries. Anyway, it's just like so weird seeing like the most random guy like that has like a tiny wrestling podcast like show up in the Dabble. You're like, holy shit! It's fucking. But he has a different name on his wrestling show. I can't remember what it is right now. But yeah.
He Yeah, I don't know. I to be honest, I can't quite figure out the Clearwater Chad what he's trying to do, if he's just trying to get his name out there. Um, I'm always wondering what people's end goal is or
Yeah.
end game, and that's one I can't figure it out. So so Clearwater Chad was grifting the anti-Scientology community. Um, because that's what we've been accused, that's the accusation here, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely looking for donos, but I mean, I don't really know. The point you made is really great because it's like he's so zany or whatever that it's hard to really pin him down on what, I don't really know if how, I don't really know, but I think effectively, yeah. But I mean, I don't know if that was his scheme or what he was, if he even really, I don't know. Yeah, it's really hard for me to watch him because he's so like strange and boring, and I have like a very low tolerance to secondhand embarrassment, which makes me like nope out on lots of content. Like I just get so cringed out by some stuff, and Aaron's one of them. Like I had to completely stop watching him because he just was getting so pathetic. But Chad is
Listen,
like,
if you want something hilarious to watch, Shuli just did something this morning with like a fucking puppet. It's probably the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I
Worth it.
I got to see a little bit of it, and it's steel toe related. The
It is so funny.
one the Shuli is Israeli, and they make fun of him for his big nose. And in the thumbnail, he's replaced his big nose with a steel toe boot. And I haven't seen that. I saw a few seconds of it when you posted it, Lemmy. Um, and what I saw was funny, but I haven't really watched it enough
When
to know if
he
it can.
well interacting with he had a video on loop of Johnny just doing nothing, and he was
yeah.
it was so fucking funny, dude. You gotta watch it. You have
I,
to.
I think it's really interesting, like when people mediate that sort of thing, because that's when I really get into it. But if it involves like Aaron actually being on screen and talking, like but that sounds like something I would actually be able to watch. It just, I don't know. It's just something about, I have like a sort of high second degree emotional sensitivity to a lot of things. Like, have you guys ever heard of Stendhal syndrome? Where like you can, like people like look at pieces of art and become like deeply emotionally moved. Like I've that's happened to me like a number of times, like just in the
It's
most
happened to me a
random
number of
things.
times. Maybe you're a
Yeah, like,
woman.
well, something like that. But I just feel like I have like a, I don't know, whatever, some weird second degree, I don't know, connection to like people's emotions on screen, like just a high whatever you call it, receptivity, or I don't know. But yeah, like one time, even when I was watching an MMA match, it was an Amanda Nunez match, and like these women were just fucking going at it so hard. It was like, I don't know, it started kind of overwhelmed me, but in a number of different instances. One time at the Prado Museum, we're looking at Goya's black paintings, which are pretty crazy.
See,
Anyway,
I get that. I get that feeling sometimes watching people people who embarrass themselves on YouTube streams and stuff,
Yeah.
and uh, and when I'm talking like stuttering John level embarrassment, and I'm like,
Yeah, that's tough.
I can't watch I can't watch it. I have to watch it through a filter because
Yep.
I start to feel cringy.
Yeah.
And I'm even more cringy when I watch something that's somebody's doing something embarrassing that I know that I've done in the past or are capable of doing. You
Yeah.
know, um, the great giving the great joke and then everybody just sitting there staring at you. Um, it,
Yeah.
you know that. But I do love that they have a lack of self awareness with some of these guys. Like Aaron is embarrassing himself but yet continues to embarrass himself and is convinced that he's doing great. I don't know if it was him that I don't know if it was his show or if it was a clip, but I heard him talking about wanting to be a teacher and teach all these people about radio and how you do it. And it's like Stuttering John teaching acting, you know?
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Reminds me a lot of Scorch. I don't know if you guys are Opie and Anthony people, but like he was like an old radio guy that worked with O&A back at like
Kingdom of
WAAF.
Nakedness.
Yeah. And he was just the most cringe guy, but he would always like do these things where he'd be like have everybody in the on his show like talk about like why they love doing radio or like just all this like it was so cringe like it was so hard to get through it at times because he was I don't know just I can't even really describe exactly what it is but yeah
Poor
it's like
Scorch. So, all right, let's try to get back to cult talk for a little bit. And I always think these are going to be great ideas, and we're just going to be filled with stuff, and then uh, we go through them pretty quickly. But w- so Sarah Isabella Pollock, Lemmy, and Isabella, not Leo Gunn. She was Larry Ray of the Sarah Lawrence cult's assistant, basically,
yeah
and uh, she did some pretty horrible things. And at one point, he's got a naked girl in a chair where he was putting a plastic bag over her head and then taking it off. And there's the story. There's a story with him. He beat somebody with a hammer. She was the one that went and got the hammer
Mm.
for him. Um, anyway, Larry went away forever. She pled guilty to one count of money laundering, which the maximum sentence was 5 years, and the judge gave her 4.5. Um, and the even some
which
of the victims, the victim of the one with the plastic bag attack, said that she really didn't have control over what she was doing. She had been brainwashed or whatever you want to call it.
I don't
And
know if you got to this in the Yanya Lalich stuff but she describes this phenomenon as bounded choice which is a really
right.
interesting descriptor yeah
Yeah, yeah, and that's where what triggered me was like the Lalich stuff, and then I went there, and then the bound to choice. But at what time, when does a victim of a cult become when you take it out on the next guy or the next person? Like when do you become the oppressor, and how responsible are you for it?
it's a very thorny question and I think you know, we mentioned Mike Rinder earlier, and he's a great example of somebody that spent like the last half of his life atoning for like the first half, and people would still get on him for not doing well enough. But I don't think you can find a better example of somebody that turned their life around and became committed to the opposite cause. But it's yeah, he definitely harmed a lot of people while he was in Scientology because he was one of the highest ranking execs. But you know, he went through hell. He was one of the people that was in the hole for like years. The trailer that had like a bunch of executives in the Scientology higher strata that had fallen out of favor with the leader, David Miscavige. So
Right, but he
yeah,
came out and he fought them, right? He went on the other side. Um, there's a bunch of people who've
well,
left
the
and
reason
not done anything.
thinking about it is because he died like a year or two ago of cancer, and at the end of his life was like right when the whole Aaron Smith Levin thing was popping off, and Aaron Smith Levin was like constantly criticizing him, and even alleging that he was faking cancer to get donations. And so people like in that SPTV community were very critical of Rinder and said that he should have done more, and you heavily criticize him for the things that he wasn't doing. And so it's like, it's a very tough situation. It's that's just one of something that I've thought about a lot recently because it happened a year or two ago.
Right. But would you say, look, my take on Render was that he was trying to atone for his sins,
Yeah.
right? And there were people that were never going to let him, no matter what he did, it was never going to be enough, right? Um, so he has to be comfortable with that in himself. But if you take somebody like who's involved in physical violence, who's involved in hurting people, maybe even death of other people, um, does should their atonement include jail time, banishment? I mean, is it criminal? Do we let people get away with acts of violence or illegal activity because they got sucked into a cult?
I'm sort of soft pedaling myself here just in case Lemmy has a thought, but
I'm waiting for
yeah,
Lemmy. I want her to.
because I worked in the
I
yeah, go
don't
ahead.
know if there's any. Is there any bottle? I don't know because there's so much psychological damage that you can do to a person in something like Scientology or even Mormonism, even Catholicism. Really, it's the extremists. You're gonna have extremists everywhere, and like with the Aaron Scientology group of people, he's got an incredibly large community. So it's not lost on me that even a one percentage of his community being toxic Reddit fags, you know what I mean? That
Right.
are hell bent on destroying a person because they were involved in Scientology, like Mike Rinder, that they wouldn't allow him to atone for his sins. That is cult like mentality, and again, it's the roads to hell is paved with good intentions type shit.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
for sure.
I
Yeah,
right. So I I see that and I see you there.
Also, I have to
As
pee. I'll be right back.
as far as
sure.
I know, the Isabella thing, right? She hasn't done anything to
Isn't she
atone.
still out on bond? I thought I read something about that. I could be wrong
She
though.
might be. I know that she got 4.5 years. I don't know how much of it she served, or I don't know what the follow up was, but basically, this person wanted no jail time
Like
and had
TJ's comment.
really been involved in some heinous acts.
Just having like a lot of close contact with the criminal justice system from working at the public defender and prosecutors and all this sort of stuff. Like my personal opinion is that like prison time is not going to be helpful, and in fact is going to just sort of extend the cycle of this dysfunction. So I mean, there has to be some other type of solution to remediate that type of situation, like some, I don't know, counseling type solution. I just, yeah, just putting somebody in prison after they've been in a cult is like just a recipe for disaster. I don't think prison really helps anybody. In fact, my personal belief is very few categories of offenders should ever be in prison. But
I just what I'm going with is, look, I'm assuming that prison is society serving. You're being penalized. I mean, what I
yeah,
call them
yeah.
penal institutions. Um, do we owe those people something? So do we owe? Would we owe an Isabella Pollock something as a society for allowing her to be trapped in this and not dealing with it? Do we just lock her up for a number of years and say, okay, your penance is served, and you do it, or do we say um, we just don't let her go?
Yeah, I think those are two terrible options.
Do you think there's an option for reform?
That's what I was just mentioning. You know, people are asking like if I'm a leftist or if I'm Canadian or Alaskan. I'm Alaskan. I'm not a leftist. You know, I don't even really have like a political stripe. I think I don't really sort of clock the left-right paradigm, but I just sort of have opinions on different issues based on my experience. So I know that that might be a leftist facing in your
I don't know. I don't.
professional wrestling federation that you're following, but I don't happen to
I look,
subscribe.
man. If you could get rid of prisons, it's all good. It's all good with me. And I think it's like some of the things that we've done in some places, like in places like New York, where you're not allowed to ask about convictions until you reach a certain point in the job process. Um, I think that's some fair stuff. But the problem is that we arrest particularly young men. They go to jail for 4 or 5 years, and they're never going to get past that again because it's always going to be you're a felon, you're this. Nobody's going to want to hire you. And if I've got 5 people to choose from, and
You're not choosing the felon.
I'm not choosing the felon, you know, um, and that might be the best, and that might be the best person for the job. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's the solution, but I also think that, particularly among the black community, like we put these people in a position where they commit crime and they're forced to commit crime to just sort of get along. um, and you lock people away in housing projects and whatnot, and we just don't want to deal with it. It's easier to just put them in prison for 6 or 8 months than have to deal with them bothering the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
um, in productive society. But but the thing is, like, when it comes to cults, right? So most of the people in these cults are they're not minorities. They're not like people who came from terrible. Most of them are not people who came from terrible circumstances. I mean, there's smart, intelligent people. So how do you rationalize that? How do you know something is wrong morally, in 2024, and then you get involved in a cult and you're locking people in a room for 24 hours to punish them a year later?
Conditioning. You can condition a motherfucker. Depending on how charismatic you are and convincing you are, manipulative you are, it all you need is time and people. You
But
know what I mean?
right, but you as the person being conditioned, do you bear any responsibility that you're being conditioned? Right? Don't you isn't there at some point where you got to go, "Oh, wait, I'm being conditioned. This is what their goal is here."
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think on some level, but like you almost need like a separate category of laws to get into this, and we already have more than enough laws. But I mean, it's why I think some type of system that focuses on the term is incredibly tainted, but rehabilitation would be the optimal solution. But yeah, I don't think it's just like low IQ. What I think the main thing is like people that have an emotional vulnerability. Like lots of people anecdotally over the years have talked about how they join cults after a breakup. People that are seekers, like the people that join Nixium, lots of yoga people, but also like the Bronfman sisters who were wealthy heiresses that didn't have purpose in life and ended up getting sucked into Nixium and giving Keith Raniere hundreds of millions of dollars because they were needed and had a real purpose and a community around them in that space. So I think what Lemmi was talking about earlier, about the way that people are isolating and the lack of community, in a sense, is very fertile ground for cults because they're looking for people that are disconnected.
Because yeah, and regardless of whether it's prison or rehab or whatever, I'm really asking the question is like, do we hold them accountable? right? Should society hold
Hold them
people in these
accountable
cultures accountable?
how? What do you mean hold them accountable?
I
Like trap them in a room or make them do acts of kind? Well, like what do you mean hold them accountable? Tell them that they're a terrible fucking person? Like what do you mean?
I think
uh,
maybe it's like a paradigm shift that's needed instead of like looking at it like, something's wrong with them, like there's a moral deficiency, sort of like the shift with diseases of addiction. It's like that doesn't really solve anything. And this penal system that we've had has been in place since like the 19th century, by the way. So it's due for an update. But I think it's not so much holding them accountable, but like focusing on how can we best remediate this so that it doesn't affect society at large more. Like how can
right.
we fix this
I'm
person
but
and
I'm specifically talking about these people in cults that
yeah.
that become enablers, right? Because they move from a point where they're a member to then becoming enabling of the leader.
I think at the end of the day, though, what you're talking about is trying to assign blame, right? And I'm just saying that I don't think that's productive. I think what you need to do is instead focus on some way to fix it so that it doesn't affect society at large. You have to have a productive aim rather than trying to disentangle all the. I mean, because it's just very difficult today, and especially with second generation members of cults. People that grew up. There's a lot of really interesting literature out there, and people that study this type of stuff about second generation people, and that's such a hard question to answer because they grew up in it since day one. In those formative years where you learn all about the world. It's just Aaron Smith Levin, for example, is a second generation, and so how do you assign blame in his case? He grew up. His mom was like on staff at Scientology, so that was his entire world, and so that's why I have a lot of forbearance for him in some regards, or at least understanding.
See, and look, I, I'll give you that. I'm really talking more about um, the people who go into who get into these things. They start to see it going wrong. Lemmy would call it conditioning, um, right? That this person's being conditioned. Does the does the person who's being conditioned have a responsibility to know what's
If
going?
you're being conditioned, your weaknesses are being exploited. You know what I mean? So I don't think that it is even a factor of a responsibility being taken. You know what I mean? It's taking advantage of somebody who is weak, in my opinion. I'm
Right, but
not sure. Like, would you blame a sick person if their caretaker was giving them morphine because they didn't tell their primary doctor between bouts of consciousness?
no, but it's not the same thing, right? I
How is it?
would
Well, it's kind of the same thing.
because if I'm the leader, if I'm a leader, right, and I tell you to give somebody morphine, so because the money's coming in from them, so you give it, let's keep them dopey so they don't think too much about it, and you do that, right, as the intermediary between the leader and who's ever being abused. Don't you bear responsibility for that? And can't you just say, well, he brainwashed me or she conditioned me. That's why I was doing these things.
Are you talking about from like a legal standpoint or like a mental and emotional
No, I'm
standpoint?
talking about from a societal standpoint.
I think your question is like sort of trending in the right direction in terms of like what we should answer. And I think it's obviously like incredibly thorny, and it's not something that would be able to resolve here. But I just think it's not it's a category error. It's not the question we should be asking.
So
I also
what
don't
would be?
think it's like if we really want to break it down and get like a little personal with it. I think I'm having trouble understanding your question because like that circumstance is so fucking interpersonal and I think and forgive me if I'm wrong that sometimes when one's only form of entertainment is this, they think that everything is up for public interpretation and through that lens. So, like, somebody being deconditioned from a cult in Iowa is none of my fucking business, and I have no opinion on it. And I don't think anybody else should either. Or, like, I don't care enough about societally. I don't think anybody gives a shit about the conditioning or deconditioning of a cult unless they are like making physical waves in their community in a bad way. You know what I
All
mean?
right, well, but here, let's talk about this, the preacher arrested in Minnesota. I'm sorry, Michigan last week, right? So this guy gets arrested. There's money laundering and a bunch of other stuff. But essentially, he was trafficking women. He was putting them into call centers, making them work and work and work. There's sex
Andrew Tate
trafficking.
them.
Right. There's sex trafficking allegations. There's all that. What I'm saying to you is not those people that were necessarily brought in, but the people in the level below. Was it Taylor, whatever his name is, Tatum, below David, I think was it, below him, but above these other people. What responsibility do those people bear? Right? Because the people at the bottom are not. Most of those people are not
Are
there.
you asking what responsibility do the victims bear?
No, I'm asking. That's what I'm saying is that the real
Are you saying
victims.
are they victims?
I'm saying the real victims to me are the people that were forced to work in those conditions and unable to leave, right? And essentially held against their will. But the people that enabled that, are they victims as well? That's the question I'm asking.
I guess it would depend on how long the cult has been around. Like, are you a brand new cult leader? Is it a brand new cult, or like, are you like second or third gen type
Well, let's
shit?
use
You know what I mean?
right. I mean, if you're second or third gen, that's a different story. If you're a member of the Westboro Baptist Church
Hmm.
and you're a grandkid, you're gonna be held to a different standard than you know.
A lot of
s-
those grandkids are like beating feet the fuck out of there too, which is great to see.
Right, and the one is it, I don't, is she a granddaughter or a daughter? Granddaughter, whose name escapes me, who's uh,
Megan
really out
Phelps
there now.
Roper.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, the chick who like Twitter saved her life or some shit.
Yeah, it's a great story.
I love it.
Yeah. Um, so I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about.
I, I just think it's a question that probably deserves to be debated in some law journal or something. But it's I don't know. I just find it difficult to really engage on it because the I don't know, the legal system's so broken that like at trying to add like extra layers or trying to do anything that's like not already baked into the process of the law to like and cult member like people that are in this type of situation you're talking about are very much an edge case. So it's just it's
Right.
difficult to really sink your teeth into for me because I sort of have offered my personal opinion, but I just don't really have any other solutions to that because I know that the system is so broken that it's not really possible to.
Yeah, I'm not talking about I'm not even talking about legal consequences, but societally, right? Have we lost?
Right. But what
Should
does
they
that
be
mean? Like, what
shamed?
is the
Should
upshot
they?
of that?
Should we shame? Should we? Uh,
I don't think
treat,
we should ever. I don't think shame is ever appropriate unless it's coming from a place of love and somebody that you absolutely respect. And I'll give you an example. When I got fat, my mother came to me from a place of concern and shamed me for being completely unhealthy and irresponsible with my body. If that were to come from society, I'd get depressed and fatter. So I don't think it's no, I don't think you should shame victims of a cult. That's fucking insane.
right. But at the same time, there are millions of women who are in therapy because their mothers shamed them for being fat, right? It helped you, but it hurt somebody else.
I know my mother loves me. If somebody, not a whole lot of people have a I'm in the minority when I say that I got along with all of my parents. I know I'm in the minority because I've shared the story several times over several years, and I get 80% of the people in anywhere that I'm talking, "Oh, I fucking hate my parents. I hate my dad or I hate my mom or blah blah blah." Most people don't fucking get along with their parents. So I don't know, maybe that is a normal, maybe I'm the minority.
No, not at all. I just my point was that shame is shame. I think no matter where it comes from. I was just trying to figure how does a society handle how as a
They don't.
society do we
It's
treat
not up to society. It's not society's responsibility.
no, but it
I
is
think that's why I'm
society's
having no, it's
it is
not.
society.
Why?
If
Why?
so in any circumstances, the guy who murders the woman on the train in Charlotte, does society have a responsibility to take care of that? Or no?
Um all right, let's say it does. What are you going to fucking do about it as a person of society with a responsibility? What are you going to do about it?
Make sure that something's done about it, but just
Okay,
as
oh
society.
what
But
specifically?
I could ignore it, right? I could say we
Right?
don't have to do anything. I could be a
Right.
person that says, "Look, there should be no consequences for it. He
What
was
are
a
then what
mental
type of person are
person or
you then?
whatever."
If you, as a person, as a responsible
I'm
person of
not saying it as an
society,
individual. I'm talking about a
what would you
society.
suggest?
What is a group? How does a
What do you
society
suggest? How
handle
about
these things?
that? Let me
I don't
ask
have an
that. What do you
answer. It's really
suggest?
why I'm asking the
Do you mind if
question.
I interject briefly? I just don't
Yeah.
think that
Knock
this
yourself
is
out.
going to get to a productive or interesting place. This specific topic just seems like it's, I don't know, sort of meandering into like it discord. So I don't know. I think we should move on. I was trying to avoid saying this, but I don't think it's something that's going to uncover anything interesting or lead to a good conversation.
I agree.
Okay. My reason for bringing it up um, was in a bunch in a lot of the stuff that I was looking at in these cults. It seems like what I would think were a lot of abusers got away, while the leaders got caught. The leaders got in significant amount of trouble, um, and enablers were able to get
But
away.
yeah,
And
the
people
well,
at the bottom, and the people that were really hurt were really victimized, and
Do you
don't
have an
seem to get any
example?
justice.
that's I was just about to ask if you have like a specific example that you're talking
Let's talk about
about.
Isabella Pollock is a good example.
Yeah, I mean, she did get a sentence. I don't really know that case that well. Thinking of a contemporary analog, Nixium, a lot of the secondary strata did get hemmed up. But I mean, I do sort of see the germ of your point in that, for example, the people that participated in the Vow documentary series by HBO were some of the people that were like brought the most people into the cult. Sarah Edmondson and Mark Vicente, they were some of the highest and longest serving members, and they sort of skated because they turned on Keith at a convenient time. But it's like, I just don't think this is something that a we're equipped to litigate, and b that there's like any sort of easy answer for. It's like a cycle of abuse, and so it sort of gets into some pretty deep philosophical questions that I think we're sort of circling around, but don't really have the tools or, I think Lemmy's point about it's just not something that I don't know. I personally take on to my own concern because it's so remote and such an edge case, and we're sort of at the point where we're asking how many angels are dancing on the head of a pin.
No, I disagree. I mean, I think it's very much the question after World War II was I was just taking orders, and that's what
Sure.
I had to do, and I feared for my own life, and that's why I did these horrible things.
Yeah.
And so, what level of
Would you have empathy
responsibility
if that were
people?
like a true statement? Are you trying to I could understand if using it for an excuse to get out, like if you truly have like that is a kind of a tough case with the whole that girl being essentially conditioned into kill like helping that dude kill that dude, you know what I mean? That's fucking insane. I think she if that there's no way that she wasn't. I don't know. That is really difficult to wrap your head around,
Yeah, I guess I'm asking the question
especially
because
when
this
there's so
just
much
keeps
like
seem
legality and shit like that around it.
this
But
seems
I
to
don't
be
know.
happening
I feel like
over and over, Lemmy.
there's
So
a
it's like,
lack of empathy for shit like that, for dark things like that, and we are so gut reactionary to hate the things that we fear instead of trying to understand them, if that makes sense. So we are so willing to trap something that we fear instead of A, trying to understand it, and B, trying to like help in that specific situation. Jail is, I don't think jail would be the correct recourse for that woman. Some sort of rehabilitation absolutely would.
Hey, you are on it. This book right here is something I've been reading. Can you guys hear me?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Kay just made a point about how they should have never shut down the mental health facilities, and I've been like so deep in this exact issue. This book right here, is Madness in the Streets, is about like that process. How psychiatry and the law abandoned the mentally ill is the subhead, and it's like a history of it. It's fascinating, and yeah, that's a big point. Is like we don't really
Hello.
have the facilities. I guess Lemmy is not.
Lemmy, can you
I
hear
can
us?
I can hear Lemmy.
I can hear her as well.
But yeah, it's a really big issue, and I think it's just sort of the powerlessness that I feel in having this discussion is revolving around that, because we don't have these facilities that we used to have, and a lot of the stuff's being left on frontline people like cops and hospitals, and it's just becoming worse and worse. It's putting strain on all these different things.
Right,
We
but
don't, as a society, emphasize this enough, or make enough a point to sort of try to deal with these issues at the root cause. So like us debating it is fine and good, but my response is I think some sort of like effort to establish like a third way or rehabilitation type system would be my answer. But I mean, that's all that I really have to contribute in terms of this discussion.
Look, I think on the what do you call it? I think part of the reason, a big reason why a lot of those facilities were closed, because we were just housing these people in horrible conditions.
Sure,
And we
but
thought
then they got put on the street, and then they started to affect society at the street level, and then a lot of them ended up getting put back into those houses, but on that, in just a way more expensive and sort of like single room occupancy type situation,
or they wound up going to jail. I mean, that's
it's
right.
It's again the lesser of two evils type situation. And the other thing that's really interesting is that a lot of this was spurred on by, at the end of the civil rights movement, all these crusaders were looking for the next cause, and so then they started to say, well, the mentally ill need to have their own civil rights, and that involved them not being, it's again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions type situation.
Right, and this is so basic. And when you get to that, that gets to be my question, right? So you would say the mentally ill have the right to legal representation and all this, right?
Yeah.
And it should not be the district attorney that's representing the people, is I think probably what you're, there should be some it's like, what's going to wind up best for society, and throwing somebody away and locking them away and throwing in the key is not the answer, or, housing them in these places. But I remember, in New York, the Willowbrook scandals, where they had the facility and people were just in their own shit, 24/7. But right. So this is a beloved chatter. The question seems simple: how guilty are the female accomplices of predatory men? It is a super complex, involving factors like their agency, how coerced they were, their motivations, right? And I guess my point was, it just seems to me that we hold those women way more responsible in individual circumstances than we do what I've seen of these cult leaders who've gotten away with stuff.
Somebody was asking, Madness in the Streets. Yep. How Psychiatry and the Law Abandoned the Mentally Ill. It's a fascinating book. And it starts out with, particularly of interest to me, an example of how people used to go and like gawk at the mentally ill and throw rocks at them in the 19th century at Bedlam Hospital, like in England. It's really fascinating to me in terms of like the modern phenomenon of the locale. Like this was like the historical antecedent to that, but it has lots of interesting detail like that, and a lot of description of the process of how these advocates and politicians did away with the asylum system, where they had doctors and nurses monitoring them and were able to keep track of the population, to when they closed the asylums and everybody went on the street and it just became chaos and the families were left to deal with a lot of it, and they didn't have medical staff to provide. Anyway, it's a great book.
Yeah, I don't. What I'm finding hard to believe is that we had a time when there were asylums that were helping people. Um, you
Yeah.
know, and that was part of letting them out was to give them, to give them a chance, but
But
not
there's
that
no plan in place. There's no, there wasn't some scheme in place where they were going to do something else but better. It was like the asylums were sort of like a harm reduction type thing, and then letting them out into the street to, stir in their own shit in public, and then affect everybody else.
right, and then
Obviously, it's had
tell
a
us
pretty
that it was
dangerous effect. Yeah.
right. It was our society that was doing harm. Go ahead, David. Welcome to the chat
Hey,
Hey, Dave.
to the
how's it
program.
going, guys? I don't know how
Good.
loud or soft I am, but
No,
hopefully
you're
I'm
good.
good.
We're
Yeah.
good.
Nice and bassy.
Getting
Yeah.
get
Yep.
getting quick to I'm gonna wrap up here pretty soon. I don't know that we accomplished what we set out to do, but
I thought it was an interesting conversation that went in a lot of good directions, but that's my sort of weird.
I'm
Brain.
I'm like interested in it. I enjoyed it. I but I saw the look on Dave's face when he came in, so I wasn't sure that he did.
No, I actually came in because I loved the Chad bashing, so the Clearwater Chad bashing. So I'm here for it.
We have we're very simpatico, Dave. We have
We
all the
are.
same-
I know,
Yeah.
Leo.
So I didn't know how
Damn.
much you wanted to talk about that, Leo, but
I'm
would
willing to talk
be
about it. I
hap-
just didn't want to go too deep into it because I didn't know. if there
right,
was an
and
issue.
I didn't want to put Lemmy in a position.
Yeah.
But I frankly don't care. So what's the deal, man? I can't quite figure it out. Like it feels like a grift, but I don't know what it is. What he's been doing with us, and
I'd be interested to hear Dave's perspective, just because he's obviously followed it as well, and
Yeah.
I'd just be
Well, Schmuel already stole my perspective, which was I was calling him a grifter because he essentially got ran out of the anti-Scientology community for being those guys they're trying to do good work. They don't need some fucking goofy fat fuck in there trying to steal money from it. And then people keep going, steal money from what? If they're gonna watch, and I'm like, no. You're kind of in my opinion, you're making light of like a situation where better time and money can be spent trying to actually get people out of Scientology. So so he came over to the Dabbleverse to kind of just
yeah.
he's like, well, this community looks like it's grassroots, and I guess he felt that he would garner more respect over here, and there was a lot of personalities that he can try and suck up to and climb up to. I mean, listening to fucking John today, and I believe it too. Fucking send me the link. So that stuff's gross. So he's a fucking little snake, and I'm glad we defeated him.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like that sort of anti-Scientology thing is not really a good place for shtick, which is what his whole thing seems to be.
Yeah, Zero Dark Tony. I haven't heard that name in years and years and years. I can't even imagine that he's even involved in this shit. But apparently, Zero Dark Tony's had me blocked for at least 5 years now. Thank God. But yeah, that's another grifter. Fuck that guy too. He's a little piece of shit also.
Yeah,
Thank you,
As I was mentioning, I did.
But give me one
this
second.
series-
Thank you, Peter
was-
Sky Parker, for the $3. Leo and Dave, FMK, Fatlisha, Ari Jane, and Jesse Angel.
What's FMK mean?
Fuck, marry, kill.
Oh, okay. Oh, I don't know any of those people. Would you say? Yeah. Would you say them?
It's fuck Mary Kill. I would say it's Felicia, Ari Jane, and Jesse Angel. Now I don't know what Jesse Angel or Ari Jane look like,
Yeah, I don't know.
but
who they
Felicia's dying off the bat. And I'll just say I'll marry Jesse Angel because it'll piss Chad off, and I'll fuck Ari Jane.
It sounds like a capital idea. I really don't have enough context. That sort of goes into the whole Clearwater Chad thing. Is like I was doing this deep dive into this. The real crux of the dispute between Aaron and the sort of established anti-Scientology people was that Aaron got kicked out of their foundation, the Aftermath Foundation, because of all of his shenanigans. There's so much other stuff too. Like he tried to run for city council in Clearwater and like got into like these drunken brawls with people in bar. It was so much different stuff. And so, because of all of his controversy, the Clearwater Aftermath Foundation kicked him out, and he attacked them in response. And so it's just, there's all this, it basically became incredibly unproductive for the anti-Scientology movement because Aaron was attempting to attack the established people that help people get out. That's what the Aftermath Foundation does. So it was just a fucking mess, So he tried to establish his own foundation, and yeah.
Frank is talking about Clearwater Chad. He says he seems like a good father. He's good in my book.
That's another thing.
I don't know what to believe.
That's another thing too. I think he stole his whole persona from fucking Destiny. So I don't know if that's true or not. So like Destiny was a carpet cleaner who knocked up his fucking customer's daughter. It's the same story Clearwater Chad has supposedly. But no, he's supposed to be like, oh, you could see I've got a website from 10 years ago or whatever. Like if you know my real name, blah blah blah. And it's like, no, dude. That don't mean shit.
Oh wow, that makes too much sense. It's like
he's
him,
stealing,
like, putting on a skin suit, like yeah, that's really creepy.
How he fits in any suit is beyond me. I didn't mean to yell there.
Look, it wouldn't be unheard of, right? Like,
I mean, he's doing all the characters already. Like, oh, today I'm Stuttering John. Tomorrow I'm Chad Zumach. Then I'm Ray DeVito. Now I'm, So I don't know. I mean, his whole persona Clearwater Chad is based on another Clearwater something character. So it's like, bro, okay, that's fine. And if you like it, go ahead and like it. But that just, but I can also shit on it and call him a grifter. So don't get mad at me.
Yeah,
prove me wrong.
So wait, I'm sorry, you got to clear this up for me because I'm not aware of this. Did he get kicked out of the anti-Scientology community?
I don't know. Some shit I say.
Or you're just saying that, or do you know?
I say that.
I had stopped following it when that all went down because I did like a series of 3 videos after doing like a year of research, and it got really creepy. Like people like Zero Dark Tony and people from Scientology were all sleazing me and doing all sorts of weird shit to me in my personal life that I don't really want to get into. But like, I entirely stopped dealing with Scientology after that and really haven't looked into it much. Since
now
about a year or two ago.
Now imagine getting kicked out of the anti-Scientology community.
But exactly. But I think there's definitely a break because I noticed that like he stopped using the SPTV stuff on his channel and so there's something happened there. But the thing I was trying to mention earlier is like Clearwater Chad was such an ancillary, like a secondary person in this whole thing that I just didn't have the time to watch fucking 50,000. Like his channel has so much fucking content. Like I just couldn't pay attention because I had other stuff to look into.
So what you're saying is that it's even worse than I thought. He didn't get kicked out of the anti-Scientology community. He wasn't even noticed in the community. So he grifted his way somewhere else. Aww.
Yeah, I don't think he was serious money. I mean, the whole thing was very kind of pathetic in the bit that I saw. But again, it just wasn't my focus. I was more interested in Aaron Smith Levin and the Danny Masterson trial and all the intricacies there. That was what I was really locked in on.
Right. Chad's in our lives. That's just why we're asking these questions.
He's
was he trying to make
like
money
a chaos
in that?
agent. He was taking donos, like looking for donos and.
Yeah, he's an AOC, an agent of chaos. Yep.
Yeah. Exactly.
I want to read 2 super chat, not super, just regular chats. Avariza, Clearwater chat is an imbecile. Guru One
but perhaps a
says
useful
Cedar
one.
Clearwater chat is harmless fun. I think that's the question. I have that. That's my question. Is he an imbecile or is he playing all of us?
And my thought on that was like, I just don't have enough time to even figure that out because I was just involved in more consequential things. So he was to me like, a
Who
minor
could possibly
character.
give a shit? In so many words, who could possibly give a shit?
Yeah, yeah.
Only me,
That's how we
because
feel.
in every room I'm in and every show I do, I get send me a link, send me a link.
Yeah, that's what he
You
is.
know,
He's the Avarizer. He's a male version of Avarizer.
He's incredibly conspicuous though and draws attention. So there's like there's a function, that he serves for, whatever. But again, I don't want to even speculate about
That guy couldn't be inconspicuous getting into a car. Did you see him today? It takes all of his energy, every single muscle in his body, just to get inside of the car. He could probably get Quadfather probably get inside a car quicker than he can.
Fucking Ava Riza catching strays.
Oh,
I love Ava on WATP.
Send me the link. Send me
she
the
brings
link.
like such a great element to anything that like stirs that show up and like makes it a little, gives it some vivaciousness. I always enjoy because that show I can't. It's hard for me to watch these days. So.
Oh, everybody relax.
yeah. And Alba's on here regularly, so I don't agree with.
Oh, it's
Dave's.
fine.
I'm usually me sending her the thing. No, I got to tell you. So what turned me on Chad, right? I had him on the show Saturday night. Seemed like a nice enough guy, and then was talking about this dual streaming stuff, right? That got him in trouble with Fred Stoller, and but then Tukey had a tape of him trying to basically parlay his position on the Tukey show into somebody else, and like, oh, look what I can do for you, and I don't know how Tukey felt about it. He made a joke that Chad was suspended, but Chad hasn't been on his show since, and but it just felt sleazy. It felt like he was trying to capitalize, on somebody else's success, and so, that's what I don't know. I don't know if he's is he an idiot or is he fooling all of us?
I just wanted to respond to Ava and say it's nice to make your acquaintance. I've been enjoying.
Ava, you sent super chats to get on MLC. Shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't act like you're innocent in all this, you dumb fuck. Yeah, you're Clearwater Chad as a lady, okay? So sit your ass down and listen for once. Nobody wants to hear you talking in the chat, mucking it up. Spam, spam, spam. Clearwater Chad, don't get excited. We don't have actual spam, you stupid fucking fat fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question about Chad. Like, I started to like have a little bit more of an interest after the potato. What the fuck's his name? It's like I'm not
Lardif.
Lardif. Yeah, he was talking about how Chad has sort of had like a weird genius to him, and he was debating that question, and that's when I sort of started to think about it in earnest. But otherwise, it's like, yeah, in the context of the Dabbleverse, he's I don't know, a little bit more of a, I don't know. He's just in terms of the whole Scientology thing, he was just a non-starter for me there. But Dabbleverse is not nearly so consequential.
So,
Right.
yeah.
That's a good word. Word of the day, consequential. Let's see how many other content creators use that at the end of the week.
Yeah, exactly. Dave and I have a running gag where somebody will use a word that's not typically used, and then within the next 7 days, you'll hear every other content creator in the Dabbleverse or in our universe using that word. So they happen to pop up. And it's funny because I noticed Carl was the first guy that was saying like 2x instead of 2 times, right? He would always say like 2x or 10x or whatever. And I would listen to other people and they would say twice or 2 times or 10 times. And then it went for like 2 weeks. It was everybody was Xing it, nobody was saying the amount at us. So everything was like, well, for doubling it would be 2x instead of 2 times, and 10 would be whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, you look a little confused there, Leo. That's
It's
why.
about the cones.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate the context.
Dave is such a fucking bozo. He's my bozo. And so
I find both of you incredibly entertaining and endearing. So I'll have no part of the squabble.
he's a busy. He's he takes care of his family, and he's got mental health issues at home that he has to take care of, and they can erupt at any moment. Plus, his parents are in their 80s, so with Dave, it can be hit or miss. He wanted to be on here for the whole thing tonight, but he couldn't make it, and then it's just like we just had to go. Chris Mack, I've seen Ava ask for links. MLC comes to mind. I don't know, Ava. We're gonna have to take a vote at the end of this. And to be fair and totally honest, Ava, it was like back in May or June. You sent a few to get a link. There's
I just
nothing
followed
wrong.
you on Twitter, Ava. He asked earlier for me to reach out. Just touch base on
Cool.
that.
She'd love to have a conversation sometime. I never get to be part of conversations like you and Lemmy had earlier. What about you and me, Ava? That's why I have you on here. And I'm just going to remove Dave until he pops back in. But I'm going to start heading towards wrapping it up.
Yeah, I got a commitment
Clearwater
here in a
Chat
bit.
is the male Ava version of Riser. Ava Riser because he always asks for the link.
Yep.
That's not my experience with Ava. Ava doesn't ask for. She never turns one down, but she doesn't ask for them unless she's
Yeah.
been drinking and it's the middle of the night and I'm on.
Going back to our earlier discussion about the characteristics of cults and how something can have a shared characteristic and not be the same. It's like, just one overlap doesn't make a good analogy, in my opinion.
Right. Well, we're just kind of picking on her, so that's
Yeah.
We're being assholes, which is part of it. See, here it is. She's just chipping. I'm just
chipping, yeah.
chipping, Dave. Yeah. No, yeah, that's the thing is right there. So there aren't overlaps. Don't mean causation is not correlation kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like I'm fascinated by what's the tipping point. Like
Yeah.
where does this turn from just a group? Where does Nexium turn from being a business coaching kind of thing into being a cult? And my asking the question about people and their responsibility earlier is, I feel like they have to have assistance. Like I don't think they could do it on their own.
Well, yeah, like I said, you have to have all the ingredients of the cake, and these sort of things take the path of least resistance. But I was just thinking about this would be a really good topic for a future podcast. Is like getting into the history of Nixium, because I've done a decent amount of research into it, because I've written about them and did a couple videos about Nixium's origins, and it's a fascinating story. So maybe that's something we can discuss for future.
It is.
And
I'm also
when it crossed the threshold,
right, because I'm one of the other ones. I'm fascinated by the Shakers, right?
Yeah.
And what I find so funny about that is they were celibate, and I'm thinking like that's like the worst strategy there ever was for a cult.
Right.
So they were short-lived and they got away with it. But I'm also too wondering, are there things that we have that are cult-ish, or what were the words that you used to describe them before?
Like
as
a
opposed to
diet cult or
like strong group or
high control group or new religious movements or other terms that are
Right.
used for groups like
right.
this.
Like, are there high controlled groups that we respect in society because
Well, I
their
think a lot of
idea
people
is palatable? But if their
I think
idea
the
was
difference
not,
between a cult and an established religion is that the founder died some generations ago. Like the early things that we know about the history of, like, say, the Christian church or Mormonism, a lot of these different groups, they probably would have been considered in today's climate, and in some regards were considered cults or malignant groups at the time they were founded. But then, like, years later, the rough edges get rounded off, and it sort of becomes mythology instead of actual claims that Joseph Smith found gold plates in the desert or whatever. That sort of stuff loses its immediacy and becomes just part of the you know part of the atmosphere.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes cults last is when they stick to, they have I'm gonna, a scripture, so to speak, or a set of rules that they tend to abide by, and they don't flex from that. When they start trying to make things easier, um, or to get more people in, or try to be more flexible, I think that it seems to me that's when it starts to fall apart. And you see a lot with Christianity, right? For however many hundreds of years, it was monolithic. I mean, you had the Catholic Church and the Protestants, but it was monolithic with minor differences, but they all basically agreed on the same thing. And along comes, the LBGT thing, LBGTQ thing, and social justice and all that. And in a very short period of time, it's gone from, sort of the controlling organization where you were proud to say this if you were running for politics and stuff like that, and now you're hiding from it. So, but
Yeah, I mean, just looking, I was just watching something about the 1960 election recently, and like a huge issue in that election was that John F. Kennedy was a Catholic, and Protestants and Catholic. I mean, just thinking about that, it's like such a non sequitur in today's world. So yeah, it's a really interesting thing. I think that the sort of, there's a bunch of really interesting case studies about this transition that you're describing. One of the most interesting ones to me is the transition from Scientology, from L. Ron Hubbard to Miscavige. That's like a really good example of a very strong transition. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting ones like
and there aren't that many of them, right? Like they don't generally outlive their leaders.
yeah, and that's, I think we have like a real sort of what do you call it, like a failure bias, success bias, where we like look at the groups that are around still, but like there's, for everyone, for every Seventh Day Adventists or for every Mormons, there's like hundreds of other failed groups from that same era, the Millerite Bible studies era, from like a few patches in the U.S. in the mid 19th century, bore hundreds of groups like this and splinter groups, and there's some really interesting stuff there in transition. Especially like Jehovah's Witness, the transition from the first to the second leader was pretty rocky, and yeah.
Well, you go from the 144,000, and it doesn't, and you come up with 2000 and I'm sorry,
Have to find a
1917
way
and
to
World
walk
War
that back.
One, and
Yeah.
it doesn't pan out, and then you got to change it. Uh, and they do get committed, but their numbers are, just judging by the number of Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't think they call them temples. I don't know exactly. Can't remember the name. Witness halls,
Yep.
have, they're a tiny percentage of what they used to be. Just in my experience around
There's been
here.
some really interesting reporting on this, because the thing that the anti JWs think, the people that are ex-members, is that the JWs are hoarding cash by like consolidating groups into single halls and then selling off the some of the halls that that they make redundant. And it's like it's a huge imposition on the different groups, congregations, whatever you call them. But they're making like tons of money, and they also recently sold off their headquarters that was in Brooklyn for forever.
Right. They
This
moved to
huge
Warwick,
palatial
I
building.
think.
Yep. And
Well,
so they're sort of retrenching, I think, at this point, in like hoarding a war chest for something. I mean, I don't really know.
yeah. Look, I have to say that, but not selling the Brooklyn property when they did would have been irresponsible. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, I don't really know the whole ins and outs of it, but it is interesting. And it correlates with like the first drop or plateau in membership for them like ever. I think they're stuck around 7 million claimed
well, they had
members.
the thing about the Brooklyn place is it is in prime Brooklyn
Yeah,
real estate,
yeah,
right? It looks at Manhattan, um, and it was old and it needed a lot of work,
yeah,
and it was very much like um, we can spend money or we can get this boatload of money and build an entire campus in Warwick. I think it's Warwick that we
yeah, yeah.
can get all of our needs met, and we don't have to do these things.
It's
Um,
just based on what I've seen from XJWs, like they say it's part of a pattern of different choices that the what do you call it, the whatever the group is that leads the thing has been making in terms of like things that are cash positive, things that are sort of, I don't know, greedy, maybe one term.
right.
But yeah,
But what one person is calls greedy, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, the other one is going like, look, we're losing memberships. We need to do something to sustain uh, our society. And the Mormon Church putting away so much money has what's kept them going for so
right.
long. Not that they
Yeah,
told anybody
it's
about
an
it.
interesting contrast because the Mormon Church compared to the JWs is like light years ahead. I mean, they have a huge wealth, whereas the JWs are a much smaller group and much, in terms of like socioeconomics, like, again, talking about like your thing with the Shakers, the decisions that they make in terms of ideology affect them. Like one of the big ones is that JWs don't strongly discourage people from going on to higher education, because it's part of the whatever, the outside world. And so the people in JWs are not nearly as economically successful as Mormons are.
So I'll leave you with this on that thought. So we have near me we have their Orthodox Jews, Lubavitchers, and
Yeah,
or what
somebody
they
asked
call
a
it,
question about that earlier, but yeah,
and they're very insular, encourage reproduction. I mean, it's like just tons of kids, um, but they do the same thing where they don't encourage higher education. And their boys like go to school and they don't really learn anything. They're supposed to be learning math and English and all that stuff. They essentially study the Torah the entire time that they're there. Um, but in the past, they've had really smart. There's always like a standout, um, and they have like the rabbi that knows how to run things, and then they rely on that person. But as their group is getting bigger, there are fewer of those people, and so I wonder what's going to happen there. But
hmm,
one of the towns in New Jersey, the school district has become essentially bankrupt because they have so many kids and they're such an insular society that half the kids have, I mean, half, a significant portion of the kids have genetic disorders and are disabled,
yeah,
and the state has to pay for all that, and they demand it. It's sort of a very interesting but touchy topic, um, because you want to be able to talk about it, but you also don't want to be seen as anti-Semitic. So then it becomes that's where it becomes tough.
yeah.
Um,
It just ends up having all these incredible second and third order effects, like with the Mormons, for example, because they're like in contrast to the JWs or this group you're describing, because they're enmeshed with society at large, and yeah, they get into politics. They're one of the most highly recruited groups for like intelligence agencies, so they have this huge franchise of power because of their web of connections. Whereas these other groups that are anti-government or for whatever reason closed off, they're just totally disenfranchised. And in terms of the cult, it sort of fuels the stickiness of the group in a sense because the outside world is so alien and so not a part of the normal network. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, the consequences of leaving it, it's much more difficult, I'd imagine, to leave a group like the JWs or this group of Orthodox folks that you're
Right.
talking
My
about.
my friend's daughter did her medical residency, or dental residency, I should say, at a hospital in Brooklyn that serves this community. And for a lot of the boys, born and raised in the United States and can't speak a lick of English, they learn Yiddish and some Hebrew, but it's like uh, so there's no communication with the outside world. They have to get somebody from their society to help them along, and you you really it's an easy way. Lacking education is a really easy way to keep people down, um, because
Yeah.
they can't, even if they are inquisitive, they can't become inquisitive because they can't understand what's going on around them. You know, and just crazy stuff. But I'll figure out how to put that together someday where it's not where we don't come off. Because the problem is that every time if I say something like that, then I'm going to get like um, you either hate you either hate you'll hate Jews, or you love these, you're supporting them, or then I'll get the crazy ones that think I want to join their organization.
Mm.
Um, but let and I said lastly, but I'll do one more last thing. As we go forward in this, how do you like see the movements of cults? Are they growing? Are they declining? Um, what do you think about that?
You know, it's tough to say because there's not really any good data on it. But like my sense, just anecdotally, is that a lot of the legacy cults that have been around for since the 20th century are dying. Like Scientology is a tiny organization. There's probably less than 15,000 members worldwide. Certainly less than 20,000. And a lot of the other ones that have a longer tradition seem to be plateauing, although some are growing, like Mormonism. So I don't know how. Again, it sort of depends on how you apply that label. But in general, cults are becoming, it seems, much more fragmented, smaller groups, much more niche interests. Stuff like groups based on conspiracy stuff, Q cults, political cults, ideology cults that have very small pockets of members, as opposed to cults in the '60s, which had much broader membership bases. So that's, I think, the general phenomenon. And Lelich talks about this in one of those videos that I
I
linked.
yeah, I did. I couldn't. They were a lot longer than I thought they were.
Sure,
I
yeah,
thought they
yeah.
were
I was just
clips, and then
That's why I
I
just
went
said
to
timestamps. I didn't want to like actually have to like put them in Premiere and cut them up or anything. So I just
yeah,
used the
yeah, no,
timestamps.
no,
But
no. They're great. I just but I did. Oh shit! I just lost my train of thought looking at something. I my sort of I'm looking at this new thing with apostles and prophets and all that stuff in this Christian new apostolic reformation. I
yeah,
think what we're going to see is uh, more. My view is there's going to be more cult type things, but broader based. So it's not going to have the one single leader, but it'll be like almost different organizations, but moving in the same direction. And you can see the power among these guys consolidating. And so you're going to have like a tight leadership. I don't know where it goes. I don't know if it gets violent or crazy, but I mean, these people are like their messiah was Donald Trump, and you know, um, and it's amazing, and their health and what this sort of God wants everyone healed and whatnot, and they're just bringing in so much money and so much power, and so many people are caught up in it. Um, and their dominion theory of taking control of the seven pillars of or the seven mountains of society. Um, and you can see that it's sort of slowly happening. So I don't know how that goes. So I don't know if it consolidates at some point, like if a strong leader comes around, but it's very interesting, and that's the question is among all these groups is if the leaders are in the individual groups, the leaders are narcissists, can they ever get together? Right? Can narcissists work together on a single plan? So I don't know, and it may be a stupid analogy, but I don't. Uh, I see something. I see something coming, um, because they've got the Paula White is the head of like the White House Faith Office. These people have access to the government, um, and it seems like a lot of decisions are being made along the lines of what these people are demanding, and there's a lot of money. So, and in politics, that sort of counts, and I think we give them power. But do we ever think we'll see another like People's Temple again? Something that's that powerful that
Yeah, just as a last point, because I got to run to dinner here.
yeah, good.
To me, like again, using this cake analogy, like the social context is almost like the flour of the cake, right? And so in the '60s, you had a very different base, and now with the way the internet's evolving and changing, that to me is the social context of cults. Is the internet is the peer-to-peer network that cults use to propagate mostly, and so that inherently is going to be like changing from bleached white flour to buckwheat flour or something. It's going to cake horn guru Ron and Fez noon to three,
Yeah,
another radio reference. But anyway, it's going to inevitably change the confection into a much different result, a different character, I think. But it's it's hard to predict where it's going to go because who knows where the internet's going to go.
yeah. I'm also very much a believer in luck, that things just happen sometimes,
Yeah,
and you can take all the ingredients of the cake and somebody just puts them together in the right way, and that's
yeah.
where like I think the People's Temple from. I don't know that it was an MK Ultra experiment, but I just think it's like these
Who knows? Yeah,
circumstances just sort of fall in line, and
happenstance.
they
Yeah,
accidentally, it's like it's just a weird thing that they were together. Um, and then right, and then your question is somebody maybe putting those pieces there and putting them everywhere, but hoping that they all work out in one or two things. Anyway, Leo, thank you very much. And we will be speaking soon. And Ava is a regular guest on here. So let's see what we could do. Maybe we just get,
sure.
three or four of us together and she
Love
can
to. I'm a
yell.
big fan of her work. So
Oh, cool. All right. So then you know who she is. So yeah, it's
yeah,
great. And very cool. And Saturday nights we go on at 11, which is just sort of a bullshit stream. And that's our time. So you're much earlier out there. And I will just pop you links when we go up. And if you're around, you're around. And if you're not, you're not. All
yeah. I
right.
should be having more free time. But yeah, thanks, Shmuel. It's been a pleasure as always.
All right. Thanks, man. Take care.